Hello and welcome to the Small Agency Talk Show. I'm Chip Griffin, the host of the show. I am also the founder of SAGA, the Small Agency Growth Alliance, and I am very happy to have with me today Ken Jacobs of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. I'm happy to be had by you or anyone else in the small agency world.
And everybody will be able to have us in just a minute, but first, I got to play the fancy bumper I have to start the show.
So they're not going to hear me say that?
No. Well, no, yes, they're hearing that. This is all live.
Good. Okay.
Yes, you're live right now, Ken.
What do you mean we're
You
live?
are a TV star.
What do you mean we're live?
All right, here's the bumper. Just needed to have that fancy little bit, get the energy level up, kind of do a little bit of chair
dancing. Did they all
dancing.
see me dancing to that music? Because I was.
They did not. No. So if you want them to see you, you'll have to do it. No, you're.
Missed the moment.
Well, their loss, I suppose. But
can I mention a mutual friend?
You absolutely can.
Shonali Burke, who just finished her impressive, I'm going to get the name wrong, Harvard certification and all kinds of measurement. She's always trying to get me to chair dance live online.
Well, you should do it for Shonali.
Oh wow! In honor of her. Okay, maybe at the end, if you join me, we'll do a Shonali dance.
Sure. I just there we go. Nobody.
Shonali,
This is terrible. We've lost every viewer that we had, Ken.
But Shonali's watching. Oh, my glasses are always. I'm all askew. Does everyone know we're going to have fun today? Are we setting the right tone? Are we being clear?
I think anybody who's ever seen the show knows that we have fun. It's all about fun. Although as I'm talking, I'm actually checking to make sure that we are live, because although the check boxes are there, I am not seeing us on YouTube. So give me just a moment to confirm that we are actually live. And if anybody's watching and can comment, that would be great too.
Yeah, that won't be fun.
Let us see here, because it will be a lot more fun if people can hear us.
I agree.
There we go. Well, we're on Facebook at least, so I know that.
Okay.
And so then let me just double check on YouTube, because that's the primary place that we go.
Had you put me in charge of technology, this would have been just like.
Now, I am not seeing us on YouTube. Well, that's no good. That's not good at all.
I'm appalled and aghast.
I am shocked. Give me 1 second here. This is the wonders of technology, folks. So those of you who are watching on Facebook, just bear with me. Just bear with me for a minute.
Shall I tell funny stories?
You can tell whatever story you want, because the odds are very few people are going to hear it. But so take it away, Ken. You keep people occupied here while I.
If you're watching, we're going to talk about you.
Let's see. Oh no, we are. Sorry, we are live on YouTube.
We're live
I'm going to shut up now.
Okay.
We're live on YouTube, so I don't know. For some reason, it's not showing up on the Saga channel, though. It's just out there in the ether. So I don't know. Whatever. Well, this has been an interesting start to today's show.
Kind of appropriate.
But it's appropriate, and you're a leadership expert, and one of the things that is that you have to be flexible and willing to go with what happens as a leader, right? You can't sit there and say, "Well, I have this script, I must follow it," because circumstances happen.
It's live.
It's
exactly.
Live. And speaking of that, I mean, that's as good a place as any to get started here with our conversation today. You've talked a lot about leadership in uncertain times, and I think it's fair to say that even a year plus into the current pandemic, we're still in uncertain times. We don't know exactly what's ahead. I mean, certainly I think most people would say we're in a better place than we were 6 or 8 months ago. I certainly feel that way. But as an agency leader, as an agency owner, how should I be thinking about this and dealing with a team that's still, they're concerned about the future, and I've got to make some key decisions in the coming months?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I think it's good to think of them as uncertain rather than challenging or some of the other adjectives many people have been throwing around for 14 months for understandable reasons, but it doesn't put us ahead. And I think there is uncertainty, but the difference now is uncertainty with the light at the end of the tunnel, with the vaccinations. Let's just hope people keep taking them and we keep following the guidelines, social distancing and all of that. But that said, I think from all of this, understand that some or many of your team members are exhausted by all of this.
Right.
So as we start to look at creating the plans for coming back or the hybrid, understand that exhaustion. You can be comfortable with uncertainty. In fact, I think you should be, as a leader, comfortable with uncertainty. Because if you're comfortable with it, if you're in that mindset of, I don't know exactly what's coming around the corner, I don't know what this normal, new normal, whatever you want to call it, will look like. But if you expect the unexpected, if when the unexpected happens, you don't say, oh my gosh, the unexpected, but instead,
Right.
oh, interesting. Acknowledge I wasn't expecting it, and then look for the opportunity. I call it the leadership opportunity mindset. It's beyond, I'm only going to control what I can control. It's beyond, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, though those are both fine. As a leader, you can step it up and say, I wasn't expecting it. What's the opportunity here? What can I learn from here? What's the pivot here? I've seen many leaders in the agency business be able to pivot, to be able to say, this is going on around me. Are there different industries we can serve that make more sense for the times? Are there different practice areas that we can emphasize that are more needed by our clients and our prospects? So those who have done one of those two pivots, and if you've done the double pivot, have gotten through the year, I think much better than they might have expected in March of 2020. So to wrap it up, how you lead through uncertainty is really important.
Is being a leader, an agency leader in 2021 different than it was in 2019? I mean, obviously what you have to deal with is different, but is the nature of leadership, has that changed, given the environment around us?
Yes and no. The way I answer that, I should be a politician. Well, yes and no. Good question. No. I think that on one hand, all the key tenets of leadership we've always talked about are still very true. That said, some that I think are, have risen to the surface, and leaders who have done that and leaders who will do what I'm about to share will be more successful. Empathy, more important than ever, to be able to listen and try to understand what some of your people are going through, and never ever say, I understand how you feel, because we don't really understand how one another feel. But if you try to understand what they're going through, that will allow you to lead them. That's thought one. Thought two would be dialing up emotional intelligence. And if you've never done the emotional intelligence assessment and brought that into your leadership development, now is the time. And the third I'd mention is courage, right? If you embrace courage and you maybe think about leaders who you've admired over the years, and we've talked about this, I'm a history geek, so my courage leaders are, Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, Malala, Gandhi, Harriet Tubman, but whatever leaders, courageous leaders work for you. By stepping into their courage and their bravery, they were able to spread courage among their many followers and change the world. I mean, I get and I appreciate that leading a small agency today can be challenging, but you're not changing the world. You're not bringing people from slavery into freedom, or fighting Jim Crow, or fighting for voting rights, or fighting for your right to be educated as a woman in Pakistan or Afghanistan. So we can learn from those leaders. And courage is not about never being afraid. No, it is about doing what frightens you, or it's about doing what you need to do despite the fact that you're frightened. So if there ever was a time to channel your MLK Jr., Harriet Tubman, FDR during the Depression and World War II, Churchill during the Battle of Britain. Now is the time to channel it. And even if you're not a history geek like me, there are people you've met in your careers who have been brave. I'm sure of it.
Hmm.
Channel them. Or maybe there are people in your own family who have been brave, who lived their courage. Now is the time to think about that. And one last thought. When you think about, people in your career who have been courageous and brave, it's not just the leaders you've worked for. You may have a peer or two who were courageous and they can inspire you. You may have someone who worked for you and was courageous, and
Hmm.
you could be inspired by them as well. But those are three that for me really rise to the top. Now
Right.
there might be more, but
Yeah. No, I think all that's helpful. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm not sure if you've seen it as well, but a lot of the agency leaders that I'm working with have, over the last year, had to deal with more employee issues where there are things outside of the workplace that are impacting work performance, and that's something that I think a lot of business leaders struggle with because they're not used to it, right? And so you're used to sort of that happening on an occasional basis, but I'm seeing it on a much more widespread basis because folks are, they're struggling with childcare, they're struggling with, their own emotions and mental state given, everything that's going on. There's so many other things outside the office that are influencing it, and with so many people working from home, you don't even have an escape from that.
yeah, no, I think, one of the joys of the joys and the challenge of leadership is that you're leading human beings. And this is why I say, management is about managing production schedules and budgets and timetables and delivery. You manage things, but you lead people, emotional human beings. And that's part of the joy, and that's also part of the challenge, is that you are leading the whole person. They bring the whole person to work, even if they're bringing it through, a laptop. They bring all of that. So if you as a leader can tap into those, and I hate calling it this, soft skills, they're critical skills, they're mission critical
Right.
skills, they're leading skills. That's what you've got to tap into, and everyone you're leading today is going through something. That's why the listening and the empathy and the emotional intelligence for me rise to the top. If you want to be an effective leader, a superior leader, and you lead in the times, you're called to leadership. I really believe that agency owners, agency leaders are called to leadership today in this moment for reasons we may not understand, but there you are. There's a reason Lincoln led, when he did.
Hmm.
And so this is where you are. Do you want to embrace the mantle of leadership? It can be challenging, but as I said earlier, talk about rewarding.
Hmm.
So know that you've been called to this moment and know that you are able to lead if you're willing to do the work.
Hmm. You said something interesting there, which is that employees bring their whole selves to work, right? Should leaders, the agency owners, should they bring their whole selves to work, or should they be more stoic and sort of keep some of their own fears, concerns, and non-work things
Yeah.
invisible to the employee?
So it's a blend. People. Let's start with the premise that leadership isn't about your title or where you are on that org chart. It's do people that I'm consciously choosing to lead, to enhance some of these areas and to perform in these areas. And your followers get to choose if they want to follow you, right? Just because your name's on their paycheck, if it is, they may come in, they may do the work, they may tick off the to-do list, but that's not followership. Followership is a conscious choice.
Hmm.
And we're learning through research more and more that followers follow authentic leaders, and that includes sharing some vulnerability. In fact, studies have shown that leaders who share their vulnerabilities, that can create greater followership and a greater sense of psychological safety. I know many of us might think that it would create the opposite, but it creates a feeling of psychological safety among your followers. Well, isn't that something we need after the year we've had now, and as we're getting ready, I think, to come back to the office or a hybrid thing? So be willing to be authentic, to show your vulnerability, to say, I don't know when you don't know. Now, that's quickly followed, I don't know. And here's the path I see forward. I need you in the boat with me. I will get us there. Trust me.
Right.
And we're going to get there. And you know what? If you're really courageous, you say, now, I don't know if this is exactly right, because we don't really have a playbook for coming back to the office or leading, till we know we're back. And if we're a bit off, we're smart people. We'll figure it out. So
Right.
that kind of vulnerability. Now, that said, don't bring your fear to the office.
Right.
Followers follow courageous leaders. And if you share your fears, that's really off-putting and it's really unsettling. So like, what did they used to say? If you need a friend, get a dog, something like that. So if you have your fear, share it with your family, share it with your dog or pet, share it with your coach if you've hired an executive coach, but don't share your fears. That always hold back on. There's a difference between sharing your vulnerability and I don't know and I'm afraid. Big difference.
Well, yeah, and I think that it is that fine line that you have to walk, right? Because if you show no vulnerability, then to your team it can appear that you just have your head in the sand and you're ignoring reality, and that's not healthy. But at the same time, if you spook them by talking about every little concern that you have and say, I don't even know how we're going to go on and blah blah. I mean that then you've gone in the other direction. So you really do have to to get it just right.
Yeah, but I think follow your instinct, and so if that's a challenging question for sure. I'm not exactly sure, but this immediate pivot into, but here's what I think, here's what I feel, here's what I intuit, whichever language is going to work for you. And in fact, if you've got, you're in a one-on-one and you've got a follower who's a thinker, use thinking cerebral language. And if you've got a follower who's more of a feeler, then use that feeling language. I feel, I believe, I intuit. So use that. That will connect them to you. Say, here's the path I see forward. And then say, and I need you with me. I need your support. I need your active involvement in this. So you're sharing the vision for going ahead. You're showing them their role in creating that vision. That's really important. And talk about building their self-worth and desire to follow you. And then if you're really courageous, and you know what? If it doesn't get us there, we're going to figure it out.
Well, look, ultimately it's all about relationships, right? And so often we in the agency community forget that all we do is about relationships in one form or another, whether we're a PR agency, marketing agency, or whatever. And when you're dealing with your team, you have to think about the relationship. And just as, I engage with you differently than I do my wife or my son or a baseball coach or whatever, you have to tailor it to the individual and, use your personality and your strengths and understand what the strengths and weaknesses are of that individual and their personality so that you can find that middle ground.
So it's funny you bring that up. When I train on leadership, I'll pose the question, so should you have your own distinct leadership communication style? And everyone says yes, and then I press the buzzer, the imaginary buzzer, and go, wrong. But it's a trick question. Because
that's just mean giving trick questions in a training.
Yeah,
come on,
it's what
Ken.
I do. It's what I do. But the reality is, yes, you start with your core leadership approach. But if you're willing to put in the time to customize your leadership style, your communication style for at least all your direct reports, but anyone with whom you interact, if you're willing to put in that time, you're going to be a more powerful, effective leader for them. And it increases their desire to follow you, to engage, to be motivated. So, and that goes back to one of the core ideas of leadership, which is listening. right? You need to understand that person's their values, their worldview, and their dreams for their careers, and their dreams for your agency, and they have them. You've got to be willing to probe and ask and find out so you can customize the style. You can't figure that all out while you're talking.
Right.
You've
Well,
got
and I think that's the key, right? You have to adapt and customize your style. You don't change yourself, right? Because if you try to be something you're not, that's going to be a problem, right? I am not a touchy feely kumbaya type person, and if I tried to be that as a leader, it wouldn't work. There are other leaders who are those things, and if they tried to be more like me, that wouldn't work for them either. So you just have to figure out, how to take your style, your strengths, and adapt it to your team or whomever you're working with.
So my challenge for you or other leaders who say, I'm not kumbaya, well, what if your followers need that? How do you provide some of that to some of them who need it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it to increase their followership of you and their engagement and their self-motivation? So, being a leader,
and that's something I certainly had to adapt over the years, because I have had, obviously, over the course of 30 years, those kinds of team members, and so I've worked things into the way that I work with them that I wouldn't necessarily call kumbaya, but they try to meet somewhere in the middle where it is a little bit more of that pat on the back, sort of attaboy kind of thing, some of those kinds of things that some people need more than others.
Well, that brings up another point of leadership, which, I believe in, leader is servant, servant leadership, this whole notion of, many people view their organizations, let me get on camera here, where they're at the top of this pyramid. I know it's not really, because everyone reports to them and they're the boss and they're the decider, right? Invert that pyramid, right? Now you're on the bottom. Everyone who reports to you is now on top. And your job is to support each and every one of them. Your job is to increase their success. That to me is, egoless leadership. It's servant leadership. And I believe it's far more effective. So as a leader, to be effective, there are times you have to say, is it ego? Is it, this is how I've led, my way or the highway? Or is it, I can be adaptable and flexible so I can give each person, not even my people, each person more of what they need to succeed. Because if they succeed, I succeed. If they succeed, our clients succeed. Our organization succeeds. Right. So there is some sacrifice, I think, in effective leadership. Now, we all know that out there in the agency world, the PR world, the ad world, the marketing world, we do see leaders who don't seem to buy into this. It's very much their way or the highway. And some of them are quite successful. And, when I see that, my reaction is, well, the exception proves the rule. A few will get by with that. But I think we've proven that servant leadership works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, I'll admit, when I first started out as a manager, many decades ago, I was not a good manager because I had much more of that mindset, where, in fact, I remember one meeting where I said to an employee, a group of employees actually, who were, telling me that we needed to do something different. I said, well, you can have whatever opinion you want, but I'm the boss, so I decide.
Yeah, it's always okay.
And that's reality. I didn't need to say that, right? Because that is the reality already. And so, there's a way to work through those issues and not be that brusque about it, and frankly that arrogant about it, which is not helpful. And so, I think one of the things I always tell agency owners is they need to spend more time being coaches and mentors to their team members than they do, instructors or dictators or that kind of thing, because our role really is to get the most from our team, and that's not by saying you did this wrong, you need to fix this. It's that's not what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, visuals are powerful. Think about that inverted pyramid. Yeah. And I think, and there's always an opportunity to lead. So when they come to you with ideas and they're not right in that moment, I think the right answer is, thank you for having the courage to share your point of view. Because it can be scary to tell the boss, hey, you're doing it wrong. I appreciate your point of view. I've given it a lot of thought. Now, that's got to be true. Always got to be authentic. The way I see forward is in my original direction. So I'm going to ask you to get behind it just as if it were your idea. I'm going to ask you to get behind it just as if we had gone in your direction. We're going to try it this way now and let's see what happens. But to make it work, I need your support. And please keep coming back to me. Please have the conviction to come back, because next time we may do it your way. And
Right.
I want more of that. So there, so a couple of things happen. You're getting their support for your idea, which you may indeed need. But then instead of saying, he or she didn't listen to me, I'm never bringing them new ideas. That doesn't help you or the organization. So you're creating up your A again, thanking them for their courage, thanking for, having an idea that differs from yours, telling them without saying I'm the boss, I'm choosing to go in a different direction. Here's why. And I need you to be part of it. And then keep coming back. So there are 5 things that can happen in that moment that are positive.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a lot of it is helping your team understand how to constructively provide feedback or tell you that you're wrong, right? Because there are a lot of employees who haven't practiced that art too, and so it is a two-way street. Obviously, we're focused here mostly on the leaders and the owners and that kind of thing, but you have to help your team members develop those skills too, because that will help them over the course of their career, not just in interacting with you.
Well, I love that you called it constructive feedback. I think too many managers and even leaders call it constructive criticism, constructive critique. And guess what? They forget the constructive, which is the most important word, and they go right into the critique. Right. And that does not work. That does not build trust, loyalty, or even work improvement. So I encourage every manager or leader, think of it as constructive feedback. What am I constructing? Let's forget about the work product for the moment. Let's forget even about the behavior you need them to change. What am I constructing here? I'm constructing trust. Right. I'm constructing an opportunity to build them up, to build up our relationship. I'm constructing the ability for them to get, I know they can do better. I know it. I feel it. They're capable of their work improving or their behavior at the office. You're building all that. When you do that, they're going to want that feedback. They're not going to dread it when hey, it's Chip coming to my office. It's not that dreaded, oh, geez, what did I do now? Or here's that blowhard again telling me my work isn't perfect. It's okay. He's going to help me make it better. That's great. And so it builds a desire for that constructive feedback. So you are building so much, and that has got to be consistent. And what's got to be consistent is that every time you have one of those dialogues, RESPECT, Queen of Soul Aretha was right. You've got to consistently communicate respect.
Thank you for not singing that, at least. But
I don't know if those thanks are deserved, but we've already done the chair dancing. So
I haven't heard you sing, so perhaps I'm being unfair, but we'll have to save that for a different show. But I think a lot of it starts with listening, and I think one of the mistakes that I know I've made over the years, and I've seen other leaders make, is that when they're getting that constructive feedback, and they either believe it's wrong or they may just frankly know it's wrong, they don't take the time still to hear it out. And so that's going to respect, that's showing disrespect to the employee, but it's also cheating you out of information that might actually be useful, because maybe they are starting out in the wrong direction and they're telling you something that just is wrong, but then maybe 30 seconds in they get to a different point that's more useful. Mm-hmm. So you got to sit back and you got to listen.
So a few themes have come up today. Listening is one, courage is another. If you want to lead better, more effectively, everyone on your team, seek out performance feedback. No one goes into the office saying, I really want to be the world's worst manager or leader today. We all want to get better. And people want us to be good leaders and managers. They want leaders to whom they feel loyal, where they feel motivated and engaged. People want to follow great leaders, but you can only do that if you're brave enough to get feedback. Because if you're looking back on the week or the month, and you're giving yourself an A as a leader, and they're giving you A minus, B minus, C, or like they're not going to be following you. So a really brave leader gets objective feedback about their leadership performance, and then you have to have the courage to say, I want to do better.
Well, Ken, this has been a great conversation. If someone wants to follow you and learn more about leadership, where can they find you online?
On Twitter at Ken's Views, just like it sounds, at KENSVIEWS, or www.jacobscom.com. I'll give it again, JACOBSCOM, as in Mary, M.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn too. Find me everywhere. Find me on Facebook.
Ken Jacobs is everywhere, and I encourage you to check out all the resources he provides, because he's got some great stuff. He does his own interview show as well, so check that out along the way. And this has been a great conversation. Hopefully, we've provided listeners with some useful and actionable tips that they can use in their own management and leadership of their agency. Hopefully, everybody has a great weekend. It's snowing here in New Hampshire. I hope that goes away, because we've got baseball to be played this weekend here, and it's I like my umpiring, and after not umpiring last year, it's nice to be back out on the field, but not so much with snow on the ground.
Wow, you do know it's April 16th, right?
I am very well aware of it, but apparently Mother Nature missed that memo.
I got it.
In that case,
it's been great fun.
It turns out it's also past 12:30 here on the East Coast, and I always try to wrap up by then. So even though we don't have a satellite feed that's going to go down or a new show that's going to come on right after us, we're going to wrap things up today. And so that will bring to an end today's episode of the Small Agency Show. My guest has been Ken Jacobs. We've talked about leadership. Now go out and lead and have a great weekend yourself.
Thank you.